Africa's turning point, from investment power to continental connection. For decades, Africa has been discussed as a continent of potential, rich in resources, young in population, and vast in opportunity. Yet potential alone does not build prosperity. History shows that every major economic power rose not only on talent or resources, but on systems. Europe had railways. America had transcontinental lines. China built the largest high-speed network in human history. Africa never had that chance, not because it lacked ambition, but because it was never allowed to build for itself. Today, that reality may finally be changing, and the signal is coming from two places that at first glance seem separate: finance and infrastructure. But together, they tell one story. A story of a continent quietly repositioning itself from aid dependency to investment power, and from fragmentation to continental connection. A massive shout out to our subscribers for being the backbone of this channel. For anyone new here watching, your support means the world too. If you like what we're about, subscribing is the best way to stay connected, and it would really help us grow. A historic shift in who funds Africa's future. In December, the African Development Fund, the concessional financing arm of the African Development Bank Group, reached a milestone that few expected in today's strained global environment. Despite declining aid budgets and growing fiscal pressure worldwide, the fund secured a record $11 billion for its 17th replenishment cycle, the largest in its history. But the number alone isn't the story. What matters is who stepped forward. For the first time since the fund was created in 1972, African countries themselves became significant contributors to their own development financing. 23 African nations pledged nearly $183 million, a five-fold increase from the previous cycle, with 19 countries contributing for the first time. That may sound modest compared to global figures, but symbolically, it is enormous. Africa is no longer positioning itself solely as a recipient of concessional finance. It is asserting itself as a co-investor. This marks a profound psychological and strategic shift, from waiting to be funded to helping shape what gets built and why. As African Development Bank President Dr. Sidi Ould Tah put it, this was not simply a replenishment. It was a turning point. From aid to investment, a new financial logic at F17 is not operating under old rules. Instead of treating concessional finance as long-term assistance, partners approved a new model designed to unlock scale. The fund can now leverage its balance sheet, tap market borrowing, deploy hybrid capital, and absorb risk in ways that attract private investment. Already, every dollar invested through the fund mobilizes more than $2.50 in additional financing. Under the new framework, that multiplier is expected to grow. This matters because Africa's biggest challenge is not lack of ideas, it's lack of patient, coordinated capital willing to fund large systems. And that brings us to the second half of the story. Why infrastructure, not aid, built every major power? For centuries, railroads were not just transportation projects. They were nation-building tools. They collapsed distances, integrated markets, lowered the cost of goods, moved people, labor, and ideas. The United States became a continental economy only after steel tracks linked its coasts. Europe integrated through dense rail networks. China's rise accelerated when infrastructure preceded industrial expansion. Africa, by contrast, inherited railways designed for extraction. Colonial tracks ran from mines to ports, not from country to country or city to city. They pulled wealth outward instead of circulating it inward. The result is a continent where moving goods between neighboring countries can cost more than shipping them overseas. That fragmentation has quietly taxed African economies for generations. A glimpse of what's possible. Yet change is already visible. The Lobito Corridor, backed by the United States and partners, has reduced transport time from Africa's interior to the coast from nearly 30 days to just 3. This is not just a logistics upgrade. It is a demonstration, a proof that modern infrastructure can rapidly reshape economic geography. Across the continent, pieces of a new puzzle already exist: electric rail in Ethiopia, high-speed lines in Morocco, modern networks in Kenya, Nigeria, Tanzania, and South Africa. Africa is no longer lacking capacity. What it lacks is connection. The missing link, a transcontinental African railroad. Imagine a single, unified rail system stretching across regions, seamlessly linking existing networks through standardized gauges, coordinated corridors, and shared governance. A transcontinental African railroad. Not one line, but a system. Experts argue such a network could generate up to $3 trillion in GDP growth, create millions of jobs, and dramatically reduce the cost of food and manufactured goods. But the deeper impact is integration. For the first time, 1.4 billion people could be connected not just by policy agreements, but by physical infrastructure. Trade would move faster. Factories would reach new markets. Landlocked countries would gain real access to global supply chains. This is what continental unity looks like in steel and electricity. Why finance and rail are the same story. Here's the critical point. A transcontinental railroad is not just an engineering challenge. It is a financing challenge. And that is why the $11 billion African Development Fund replenishment matters. ADF-17 is designed precisely to fund what private capital alone avoids: cross-border infrastructure, long timelines, and political complexity. By absorbing risk, the fund can crowd in global investors, transforming rail from a dream into a bankable system. This is how power is built quietly, structurally, and at scale. A signal the world is watching. Replenishment process was co-hosted by the United Kingdom and Ghana, signaling continued international confidence in Africa's strategic direction. Major development partners, including the OPEC Fund and Badia, committed billions more in co-financing. This is not charity. It is positioning. Global powers understand that Africa's next phase will shape supply chains, energy markets, food security, and geopolitical balance. And they want a seat at the table, this time on Africa's terms. A different future takes shape. If the 20th century treated Africa as a source of raw materials, the 21st may define it as a connected economic system. One funded not just by external aid, but by African ownership. One built not on extraction, but on integration. Railways alone won't solve every problem, but without them nothing else scales. Africa's turning point is not loud. It is methodical. Capital first, systems second, integration last. And once those rails are laid, both financial and physical, the world will have to adjust. This is Sal Pier, signing off from VlogND, where we work to uncover the true stories of the world and Africa. Thank you for spending your time with us. If you enjoyed the journey, subscribing, liking, and sharing our videos is the best way to ensure we continue to bringing you the best analyses. We are so grateful for your support.